Hello, Nest family. Hello, Drew Jones. It's nice to be with you for a podcast yet again, but it was one of the more disappointing performances we've seen in recent times. Certainly this season, I felt, Drew, the way in which we performed against the Hawks on Sunday, a game we were all looking forward to with such a strong side. And it feels like we're back at a place we've been at far too many times over the last few years. And the knives are out for Adam Simpson. It feels like one of those real key moments in recent times, the disgraceful, appalling performance against Hawthorn on Sunday. How are you, mate?
Garby, God, so flat on Sunday. Oh, my goodness. It was just
horrid.
God, it was bad. And it's the expectations and the hope that that's what just kills you. Like, there was a lot of build-up, talk about this being the strongest side we'd had since COVID, genuine optimism with the quality of the home performances, certainly at least at competitive. Like GWS gave us a pretty good shellacking earlier in the season, and we've lost some home games which I would have liked to have won, but overall we've been competitive, and away from home against Essendon we weren't too bad. So there was some expectation that against a relatively a younger Hawthorn side who have been in really good form, we could at least give them a good shake. And yeah, I think Simo said nothing good came out of today, and that's certainly how it felt. We were just terrible in every facet, beaten in every facet. And as we've experienced over the last few years, when you get it wrong, when you get the system wrong, when you get the game plan wrong, when the players are a bit off with effort, you just look so bad. You look slow. You look just like you've got no idea what's going on. Like it felt like 5 steps back. It was really hard to watch.
Yeah, so we didn't have to beat Hawthorn. I mean, they're a really well-drilled side under a coach who is at the top of his game. Like, he is just a smart operator with a lot of energy right now, trying to make his path with the new team. Like, he's just very, very impressive, Sam Mitchell. And we know that more than most because of what he did with us in 2018. And he's got his team just exceptionally well drilled. So we didn't have to win. But my goodness, we had to put in a far better performance effort-wise, especially coming off the back of that Essendon display, which was our best away performance of the season, undoubtedly. So we don't need to talk anymore about the game. Everyone saw what they saw and they know how bad it was. It's where to now. So for me, I feel as if, and it was heading this way anyway, Drewy, the end for Adam Simpson has got to come. And this is nothing personal. We all know that. But there's no point going into next season with the cloud of a 1-year contract hanging over him. And I can't see them extending it. Like, it would take for Adam Simpson to be offered an extension beyond 2025. It would take something remarkable from here on in. Like, just 5 wins between now and the end of the season, something like that. 4 to 5 wins. And that's just unrealistic. I can't see how that's going to happen. I think we'll have a bounce back at some stage. I think we'll win some games. It wouldn't even shock me if we beat Melbourne this week, to be honest. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but I don't think they're going that well. And there's going to be a response, judging by the way they've spoken. But that can't be something that all of a sudden changes our mind anymore. There's too much evidence over the last few years, the last 3.5 seasons, that we've said it so many times, I'm getting tired of saying it. The voice has grown tired. They're just not motivated at that level you need to be. I'm not saying they're not playing for him. I'm not saying they don't like him. I'm not saying they don't respect him. None of that. But that absolute top level you need to be at in order to improve, like we need to improve, there are too many lapses. It's happening too often. And there's time now for a change. It doesn't have to be middle of the season. I'm not sure anything's gained by pulling the cord now, but if we have a few more performances like we did against Hawthorn, they're going to have no choice. But they've got to be making the moves now at the options to come in next season and make the change then and start it from next year. There's no point going into 2025 with that cloud hanging over him. And Don Pyke did a very good interview recently where he was asked about Adam Simpson and he said, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to make any guarantees for the future. If that was Trevor Nisbet in that chair, Drewy, I reckon the answer is very different. I reckon his answer is Adam Simpson is our man. We have full faith in him. He's the man to take us forward. Nizzy said that numerous times. Don Pyke's answer was different, and I reckon that was telling. and I think it's time now. What are your thoughts on all of that? Not now, as in this week. I'm just saying, come the start of next season.
Is this the first time on the podcast that you've officially said it's over?
No, I think the Sydney game last year, I think we all said it, didn't we? That we wouldn't be surprised if he went, and he probably should go after a performance like that. I think we said it then.
Yeah, those couple of weeks were coach killers. Maybe in hindsight, it's actually remarkable that he made it through that. The reason that he did is partly because of the exceptional circumstances with personnel and with what the club had been through off field, which was partially of our own making, but there was exceptional circumstances to what went on at times last season. But those exceptional circumstances are now gone, and the excuses have run out. And so my sort of thought process on Sunday night, and then speaking to people at work on Monday, because naturally people gravitate towards you. They want to talk to you about that sort of performance, was that I couldn't think of one excuse outside of Elliot Yeo, who'd had such a hard week, why we wouldn't have performed to at least our capabilities. And he's got the cattle. Harley Reid was back from suspension. Tim Kelly, had they taken extra time to get him fit and right after injuries. Barrass and McGovern were playing. Oscar Allen was playing. They gave him extra time to get over his knee. Jake Waterman's in career best form. Jack Darling's playing better the last few weeks. There were every reason, Jaden Hunt back on the wing. Multitude of other points you can make about why the team was in a better place. So there just weren't any excuses. But the issue on Sunday was that Adam Simpson was hopelessly outcoached by Sam Mitchell. We looked at, it was chalk and cheese between a team that had a great system, that knew their roles, that executed, that played well as a collective 22/23 against, we just looked like a rabble. And that to me was stark. And that I sat back and I was like, we don't have it. We don't have the game plan. We don't have the system. We don't have the roles. We don't have the tools to compete. We win clearances when Harley Reid fends off a couple of players and shows his brilliance, or Elliot Yeo busts through a pack because he's a bull and he's a superstar, or when Tim Kelly has a silky moment and gets a great handball receive, maybe from Reid or Yeo. But that's a perfect. It's like Adam Simpson without Nick Nat. He can't do it. Without Josh Kennedy being the second or third best tall forward in the comp, he hasn't got an answer for our front 50. Barrass and McGovern holding things together wasn't enough on the weekend. Maybe we lose by 20 goals if they don't play that well. Outcoached, outplayed, outthought, and outdated, frankly.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the most important point, your last term. That
to me was, and it's it's a sobering thing for us to have to say and to have to get our heads around, because I love Simo. I love what he's done. And obviously we love our football club. So, and that's the thing that overrides it. It's like, okay, I'm a West Coast fan. I'm not an Adam Simpson fan. At some point, I'm sorry, I think we need something new. The one caveat I'll give you, Garby, is I really want to see the next 2 weeks. So we're still going to have a pretty much full strength team. We play Melbourne away at the MCG, and then we've got Brisbane Lions at home. If Brisbane give us an absolute shellacking, which they could well do because they are coming into some good form. Yeah. They're hungry. If they give us a 100-pointer and we can't compete at home again, then I could see it happening in season.
Yeah.
But next 2 weeks are massive. If we turn things around the next 2 weeks, maybe I'm willing to be talked into Simpson next season, but at the moment, the way it's heading, I'm a no.
See, I'm not, because I think we will see a response. I think we'll come out and we'll run Melbourne pretty close at the least, I reckon, on the weekend. And then I think we'll be competitive in several games between now and the end of the season. We might have a couple of drop-offs. I think we'll snare a couple of wins, a few wins that perhaps are unexpected. But that's not going to change my opinion anymore. And I think it's the case for a lot of Eagles fans now. because he's been there for so long. And he's done a great job. And the last 3.5 seasons, Drew, like we've spoken about it so many times. This dates back to 2021 when we finished ninth. And we had some heavy losses and fell out of the finals. Then the horrible campaigns of 2022, 2023. Yes, the injuries were a massive part of it. Nobody takes that away from him or anyone at the club. But there was still a litany of insipid performances. Like how many 100-point defeats and heavy losses? And then this year as well, where it started ever so well, and we thought, all right, maybe there's something there. Maybe there is still a real sense of motivation under Adam Simpson at the level it needs to be. I'm not saying they're not motivated, but we're talking about the level you need to be at to get to where we want to be. Maybe it's there after the wins against Melbourne and Fremantle and some of the other performances. But no, the drop-off recently has been too stark. And to be honest, it's not so much about losing to North Melbourne and St Kilda because there was no Kelly and no Reid in those games. It was still a bottom four team, and you take two of our top three midfielders out, and it's hard to win against anyone when you're us. But the Adelaide loss, again, 100-point defeat, and then against Hawthorn, it just said to me that there are too many of these dips, and you just can't afford them anymore. And it's time for us to bring in a fresh voice like a Mitchell, like an Adam Kingsley, like a Craig McRae, someone who is desperate to carve their path in the coaching caper and just comes with that slightly fresher approach. Someone who's been at the coalface of a successful operation and the way in which you need to play these days in order to be the absolute best. And it just feels as if we're a little bit behind that right now. It's similar to Ken Hinkley. They've just been there for so long that extra element of spark that you need is just not quite there. And it just seems to me like it needs to be made at the end of this season. And that doesn't mean, Drew, that the decision to keep him on is necessarily the wrong one. We spoke about this at length at the end of last season. I think the rationale was fine. He's going to see out the storm, right? There was no one compelling from a coaching point of view that we could go and get. If Sam Mitchell was available, we would have had a different point of view. It would have been, go get Sam Mitchell now. You can't waste this opportunity. But there's no one there who really stands out. So fine, 2 years to go on his contract on big money. Let him see it out. I still think we've made some progress in terms of the rebuild, so it's okay. But no, now the change needs to come from the start of next season because we said he was seeing out the storm. We've hit some pretty choppy waters.
Yeah, I mean, seeing out the storm is fine. And if Simo had have done the rebuild until the end of next season, I would have been okay with that if we were showing, significant progress. But I think Sunday showed that we're lacking. And maybe I'm not being cutthroat enough by saying that I want to see the next 2 weeks. Is it because I'm tempted to ask, was that an aberration? Was that so bad that it had to be just a lot of things going wrong on the same day? But when you put the evidence to me about the Adelaide performance and losses to North Melbourne and St Kilda in recent times, who are bottom four teams, that evidence does stack up, and it's hard to not have the last few years in your mind when you're thinking about the body of work. But the Ken Hinkley example is a really good one. I see Port Adelaide's list as really good, but it doesn't feel like Ken. It's like whatever Port Adelaide's ceiling is from what they can get out of that playing group, I just don't feel like Ken Hinkley can get it. He can get 75 or 80%. And in order for them to unlock maybe the premiership potential at Port Adelaide, maybe they need a new voice, a coach with new ideas, that extra, few percent you get out of players under a new coach, all that sort of thing. It all in the melting pot together. What McRae did, what Kingsley did, we've seen you can get that bump. So the prospect of getting that at West Coast is exciting. And, whether that's Dean Cox or Jamie Graham, or if there's another name out there that we're not aware of or who's come through in the last 12 months or so is exciting. So a couple of things on that. Are you happy for West Coast to defer the search until the end of the season?
That's the interesting one, right? Because you could raise the point, well, hang on a second. If you're going to start looking at options, then surely you just make the call now, because that's not really fair to Adam Simpson. And the board are probably having those discussions. I don't see, and I think they would have done this last season anyway. There's no harm in putting together a list. All right, what's out there? How good is the standard? who are Don Pyke's been around the place as early as last season when he was a senior assistant coach at Sydney. So he knows what is required and who's out there. All right, let's put 7 blokes on the list. Who are the best options out there? And it's not just assistant coaches. It's Nathan Buckley, for example. Let's have it. Do we want to see how interested he is in potentially being a West Coast coach? How much fire does he have? How good do we think Nathan Buckley still might be as a coach? But that's the name that is potentially worth talking to. Is Josh Carr willing to wait for Ken Hinkley at Port, or can we maybe snare him? All these sorts of chats probably need to go on. And that's not necessarily disrespectful to Adam Simpson. If you start making approaches, then it starts to get a little bit hairy in that sense. But hey, so be it. Like, this is the caper. And we've got to start making these moves and these plans, because it is in that game-by-game proposition stage. Like, we cop a couple of heavy losses in the next month or so, and they're probably going to have to pull the pin. And then it's Matthew Knights or Jared Schofield, interim coach, and then all of a sudden their hat's in the ring. So it's at that stage right now, and we just simply can't afford to sit in our hands with it, and I don't think we will be. So I think that's probably where it's at, that we're starting to look at those options. We certainly should be. And then, if he pulls the absolute rabbit out of the hat, well, great, we're all happy. That's the other thing, right? It's not as if we want Adam Simpson to fail and be gone. I'd love him to beat Melbourne this week and then go and win 5 games between now and the end of the season. And hey, he's probably the most likely person to get an extension and lead us through the next stage. But as I said, the body of evidence is simply too strong over the last 3.5 years, not just the last 7 days.
Well, I just can't cop that. I know Oscar Allen spoke, I thought, quite well yesterday, on Tuesday, in his press conference, and he came in with with a plan to defend Simo, and I totally respect the way that he spoke. But what happened on Sunday is not an effort issue. The effort looked poor, but you cannot tell me that that's an effort issue. That was coaching. Yeah.
Because the effort's part of the coaching.
You can't just,
It's motivation. It's part of the motivation.
Yeah, you're right. But they're professionals. They want to go out there and play well. So you can't.
Of course they are. Like, I'm not, the players deserve huge blame. Of course they do. Everyone always says, what about the player? Of course they deserve huge blame. But that's just the industry, right? Like, that's any sporting team across the globe. Like, the coach is there to ensure they're at that level 90% of the season. And if they're not, then the finger gets pointed at the coach. That is just the job, and Adam Simpson knows that.
Yeah. Good. At the moment, good clubs do not have these lapses like that. They don't have those performances, not at the level, not the rate. That West Coast are having them. So I think with any discussion about the future of the club and coaching, I think we have to talk about Harley Reid. So how does a change of coach affect Harley as a 19-year-old, as someone who is, the club is, they're not pressuring him, but they're talking to him about the next steps after the first 3 years. How does a change of coach affect that situation?
It's a very good point. That is why I'm less in favour of a mid-season change, because of uncertainty. And he is such a big part of our decision-making right now with everything that we do. And yes, that creates a feeling of instability when your coach goes and a replacement comes in. It just becomes really rocky, and you're not quite sure of the plan moving forward. If we cop, 100-point loss to Melbourne on the weekend, well, then it's just going to happen. Or we play well against Melbourne and then lose by 100 at home to Brisbane, then it's going to happen. But outside of that, I'm fine with getting to the end of the season ideally. And that is a big reason for it, trying to ensure Harley that he's at a stable, sound football club that's on top of everything. But then I feel as if he needs a young coach with fire in him as well, or a younger coach, or someone who's just desperate for a new challenge and that fresh voice. I think that will be better for him from next season moving forward. But I'm less in favour of the mid-season change. Yeah, partly because of him. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'm trying to work it out in my own mind. And this conversation is helping. I'm just trying to imagine the situation unfolding where, let's say in 2 weeks, Adam Simpson is let go because of a terrible loss to Brisbane at home. So then Harley probably has to have a meeting, or whoever takes over as the interim probably has a meeting with a lot of the players, including Harley. So he has to go through that. He goes through saying goodbye to Adam Simpson. Then he has a meeting with Jared Schofield. And then the last 5 weeks of the season play out. And then there's more conjecture about who the new coach is, exit meetings with maybe the interim, but then there's a new one coming in. It's like, it's just a lot. And it's destabilizing for him and his current, just playing week to week and trying to get the best out of himself. And then decisions about contracts and discussions about his future, that probably gets put on hold because they're trying to work out the coaching situation. So it feels like the least destabilizing way that you're going to make the change is for the best. But then here's the other side of the coin. If they leave Simpson in charge for the rest of the season and things unravel, like how much damage could that do? Like a couple more 100-point defeats, some more insipid displays. Like is that worse?
It probably is.
Is that more destabilizing? Like, this is the hard decisions that need to be made. Ultimately, if Adam Simpson isn't up to it right now, if he's past it, if the club needs to move on, and at the start of next season there's a new coach in charge who can bring something new, and maybe that is best for Harley and it's best for everyone, then I think that's the right thing. It's just handling these last 7 or 8 games. That's delicate.
Yeah. As I said, I think it's game by game proposition stage. And if those heavy defeats come, then yes, that starts to become really destabilizing for him as well. And the media reaction, the fan reaction, he doesn't want to be around that. So he's a big part of it, but it's for everyone at the club. We've been through too much of that lately. I mean, we're in the rebuild. So you constantly got to look at progression. How are we progressing? Yes, you can cop the odd big defeat as long as we are progressing soundly overall. And we had been up until the bye. And it wasn't even the North Melbourne St Kilda losses. The Essendon performance was progress, but we took a huge step back on the weekend. And so, yes, that is something you need to assess in regards to him and the club overall all the time. And I think we will bounce back. I think we'll have some good performances, but it just feels the question you got to ask is, is he the best person for the job out? I think Eagles fans feel as if that's not the case anymore. In terms of our rebuild and moving us forward, that's just not the case. We just need someone with a bit more spark about them and that drive, which is very hard to maintain when you've been there for so long. I'm not saying the desire isn't there from Simo. Of course it is. But he's just been there for a long, long time, and not many coaches get that much time at a football club, especially when you've had 3.5 losing seasons like he has. So it feels that way. And it feels as if a change is going to come. And, it does feel as if 1 or 2 more heavy defeats and the plug will have to be pulled now. Otherwise, you get to the end of the season and you make that call with 2025 in mind, and you say, well, here's the final year of the contract paid out because we don't want to go into that last. I mean, it would be a circus next season, wouldn't it, Drewy, if Adam Simpson stays on in this current climate and isn't given an extension? It would be imagine that for Harley and for everyone else as well, the constant speculation and talk around the coaching future, because they're not going to give him an extension right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. There's no world that Adam Simpson gets a contract extension right now. Exactly. So maybe you can't even, you couldn't, even at the end of the season. And if we win a few games, I don't think that's feasible. So
it would have to be something way out of the box between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good way to look at it. It would be destabilizing for everyone to go into next season, Adam Simpson coming out of contract or into the season. Yeah, it doesn't sit right. It doesn't even feel possible. So Matthew Lloyd said on Monday night, I think maybe on Sunday, he said he's talked about the acceptance of mediocrity at the club, and that stinks.
Yeah, well, I don't think it happens under Don Pike anymore. I think it did previously, and there was a lot of loyalty there from certain people. You can understand that they had success. I don't think it happens under Don Pike anymore. I think he's going to shake that place up hugely. And like I said a few weeks ago, someone pointed it out on Twitter, why did I ask for a 1-year extension after the Melbourne game? It was for that reason. It wasn't to say that Adam Simpson is the man for us moving forward necessarily, but we'd made really good inroads. Okay, we're in a good place. It seemed as if we were progressing in the rebuild. Well, you don't want to go into 2025 with that cloud hanging over. So then maybe just give the 1-year extension to cool that talk while knowing that you're monitoring it all the time. That's now changed because we've taken that step back. The 1-year extension is just not possible. And so, it feels like he's got 4 to 6 weeks to give himself any chance.
Yeah.
Maximum.
Doesn't do much for our negotiations with potential free agents and trade targets. I mean, if Liam Baker's looking at the 2 WA clubs on the weekend, I know which one I'd want to be going to at this point.
Yeah, but money talks in that regard as well.
That's true.
You know that.
Yeah. And
the players will look and they'll go, what's the contract like here?
I'd be interested to know, if Liam Baker's meeting with the West Coast, who's he talking to? Is he talking to Pike and is he talking to Simo? Whether
it's Pike and Gavin Bell.
Yeah, whether the coach is part of the pitch, because likelihood is he's not going to be there going forward. So Melbourne this week, Garby. I'm actually going to see Harley Reid live finally, barring any mishaps or setbacks. So quite excited to see Harley can reproduce what he did against Melbourne last time.
It seems ridiculous to say this after everything we've just said. I honestly think we're a sneaky chance to win.
I'm weirdly looking forward to the game.
I think we're going to respond massively, and I think they're average. I know they had a great performance against Brisbane last week, but they are, middle of the road for me, the Demons, and that might take something out of them mentally and physically. We're going to be at it. We beat them earlier in the year. It just wouldn't shock me if it's really close late on.
One thing about Melbourne that suits us is like their connection inside forward 50 has been horrendous for a couple of years, and we feast on teams that do that because of the brass and McGovern of it all. So if they have big games on Sunday, and if it's not a greasy, cold, wet day in Melbourne, that could be, a really big advantage for us, having those two patrolling down back and stopping Melbourne from connecting with their forwards. So, I think we're a chance, and Melbourne are a bit of a spent force. With Flynn injuring his ankle, I wonder, like Bailey against Max Gawn could be a bit of a bloodbath in the midfield. So we'll need
that's the main issue.
Up.
Yeah, that's the big issue. Big issue. What other changes? Which other players are you looking at potentially coming in? Because there'll probably be 3 or 4 after the weekend.
And it's hard to pick out exactly who goes out because everyone played so badly.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks where you just didn't really think about the team. There are bigger issues at play. It's whatever, do what you want to do. Like I don't really care about the ins and outs.
You could almost just leave it and just say, boys, you got to do something better this week.
Yeah, I mean, Chesser I thought was. They were all poor, but Chesser got smashed early on the wing by Jaff. Jaff was on the other wing and he just carved him up. There was a poor effort inside 50. I mean, he had a down game. I'm keen for. I'd want him to stay in the team, but it wouldn't surprise if there's a change made there. I mean, Marek was sub. He probably comes in. So, Jermaine Jones, usually the player they drop when we have a bad week. So, he probably goes out. Flinney probably doesn't play, although it's only a sprain, so there's a chance, but he probably doesn't. Maybe Jack Williams comes back in. I'd like to see Cully play. They just don't seem to have full faith in Cully. I think it's his speed that they are very much wary of, and they want to get a quick team in. I get that, but you've still got to find the footy. You can't spread and move it if you don't find it. And he's someone who gets it. I'd like to see Cully back in the team. He had another decent game at waffle level. People will say True, and that's fine as well. Saying True. So there are a couple of names that come in. Sheeds is not going to play this week. Does he bring Gaff in? That'll get people even more riled up. I'm not sure Simo can pull that lever in the current climate, Drewy.
No, if you're going to go out your way. Bring them all back.
Who else comes back? Jack Redden?
Yeah.
He comes back for a go.
Let's get Reddo back in. Let's get JK. Let's like Simo's greatest hits. Yeah. I mean, I actually would not be shocked if Gaff played. I wouldn't be shocked. If Chesser goes out, because Jaff actually tore us to pieces. It almost felt like Sam Mitchell was like, Chesser's the Eagles' weak link. Let's get the ball to Jaff every chance we get. Like he killed us. The bloke's had 46 hamstring injuries in the last year. He looked like an Olympic sprinter. So I mean, if he turned to Gaff at the MCG, wide ground, wouldn't even bother me at this point. I just want to see a better performance. I don't really care who's in the jumper. Like Clay Hall, do they pull the trigger on a debutant to try and get some spark in the team? Virgil, I mean, who knows? You could roll that. I don't know.
He might go the old, we need a response. This bloke, Andrew Gaff's given more to this football club than most year blokes combined over the last 10 years. He's playing this week. It could be one of those.
Yep.
But again, that just ties into the old, I'm not going to be sucked in by a win, because long term, where are we heading? Mark Duffield wrote a really good piece on this at the beginning of the season, that the Bulldogs win apparently came off the back of a player summit, right? They all got together. This is not acceptable anymore. Players met and they got that win against the Bulldogs. But that doesn't serve you well long term. When players are doing that, it's actually more concerning for the coach, because you're only going to get the 1 week uplift. So let's say the players did that this week, right? And they met at Liam Duggan's house for a barbecue and said, we've got to put in a better performance, can't have any more of that. So we might go out and play well against Melbourne. But eventually those sorts of acts wear off. Like they start to tire. You can't keep having player barbecues 4 times a year and expect the same result.
Yeah. So
that all ties into, even if we have a bounce back this week and Andrew Gaff comes back, regardless of whether he plays or not, just tells you that's not actually comforting long-term for where we need to get to.
All right, well, we'll find out on Sunday, Garby. Thanks for breaking it all down with me. I feel like we've exercised some demons.
Looking forward to the weekend. Go Eagles, have a win.
Go Eagles.